Nas breaks his silence without saying a word, while Jim Jones spirals on air. You ever seen someone try so hard to prove they're better that they just end up proving the opposite? That's exactly what's happening with Jim Jones right now. It started out subtle. A few comments here, a little shade there. But when Jim went on Joe and Jada's podcast, he straight up lit the fuse. No hesitation. Just boom. I used to be a Nas fan, he said. But these days, my catalog, my Billboard stats, my influence, all of that makes me more relevant than Nas ever was. Now let's pause right there, because the second those words left his mouth, hip-hop Twitter went nuclear. Instagram flooded with clips. TikTok had think pieces from every self-proclaimed culture critic under 25. Even your cousin who hasn't listened to a full album since Good Kid, Mad City, had an opinion. People weren't just disagreeing. They were insulted. Why? Because we're talking about Nas, one of the pillars of East Coast rap. The man who painted Illmatic with words so vivid they should be in the MoMA. The guy whose pen game made legends nervous. So when Jim Jones, Dipset member, mixtape icon, yes, but not exactly known for his lyrical depth, came out swinging like this, it felt like he was trying to punch up. Way up. But where did this come from? Turns out this wasn't even about Nas and Jim Jones at first. This fire got sparked by something way smaller and much younger. A 22-year-old college kid from Jersey went on the Don't Quote Me podcast and casually said that Jim Jones had more cultural impact than Nas for his generation. Now, before you roll your eyes, think about it. If you're 22, your introduction to Nas probably came from a 2K soundtrack, where your uncle yelling, "Ether's still the best diss track ever made." Not exactly personal nostalgia. This kid said, and I quote, "I've never in my life been at a party and heard someone say, 'Yo, throw on that Nas right now.'" And just like that, Gen Z threw a Molotov into the barbershop debate hall. The generational clash exploded. Suddenly, Jim Jones had an opening, and he took it. He hit up the Joe and Jada podcast, saying the quiet part loud. Nas? My son doesn't know one Nas song. He claimed he was more tapped in, more influential, and, yes, more relevant than Nas ever was. Social media lost it. The culture showed up in full force to remind Jim exactly who Nas is. People dug up classic freestyles, shared Grammy moments, quoted lyrics like scripture. The consensus was clear: respect your elders, especially when your elder is Nas. But let's not pretend this is a new beef. Jim Jones and Nas, their history runs deeper than this little podcast spat. Rewind the clock to the early 2000s, peak Rockefeller era. Dipset was rolling heavy with Jay-Z, and Nas was, well, not on friendly terms with HOV. That whole Nas versus Jay-Z war was hip-hop history in real time. So when Jim Jones started aligning with Jay, he naturally found himself in Nas's crosshairs, even if Nas never really took aim. Jim, on the other hand, had plenty to say back then. In interviews, he was wilding. "F Nas," he once said. "He's a rapper that just lost his pizzazz. Loud, brash, full of Dipset swagger, but never quite landing any real blows." Nas, he played it different. Never responded directly. No diss tracks. No beef records. Just class. Just levels. And when asked about Jim back in 2005, Nas brushed it off with a laugh, saying something like, "Who even is Jim Jones?" Oof. No back and forth. No theatrics. Just one artist moving like a king, while the other barked from the castle gates. And it's kind of wild to see it all coming back around now, years later, with Jim still trying to climb that mountain, still poking the lion. He even doubled down recently on Shannon Sharpe's podcast. Now, Shannon's not exactly known for being soft on guests, and he asked straight up, "You really think you're a better rapper than Nas?" Jim didn't flinch. "I'll run circles around Nas." Right now, you could almost hear the internet groan in unison. Shannon, to his credit, hit him right back with a reality check. "This the biggest podcast you've ever been on." Yikes. That moment felt like watching someone lose the room without realizing it. And Jim, he kept going, unbothered, loud, convincing only himself. Meanwhile, Nas, silent, not a tweet, not a bar, not a whisper, but that silence, that is the response. Because real legends don't chase noise. They let the catalog speak. And Nas's catalog? It's been on fire lately. Since teaming up with Hit Boy, Nas has released 5 full-length projects in under 4 years, each one sharper than the last. And not just vanity projects, either. Grammy-winning albums, charting records, arena tours, collaborations with rising artists and OGs alike. The man's in his 50s and still evolving, still hungry, still better. That's what makes this entire argument feel so hollow. Jim Jones is chasing clout with a debate that was over before it started. Because while he's busy ranting on podcasts, Nas is making music that moves generations. It's like comparing a trending meme to a timeless novel. One fades fast, the other lives forever. And speaking of being pushed out by bigger forces, let's talk about someone else who got caught in the industry's quiet war, Amerie. Remember her? That radiant voice behind the smash hit One Thing. The song that had every speaker shaking back in the early 2000s? Well, Amerie just broke her silence too, in her own graceful, thoughtful way. She sat down with Joe Rogan recently and finally opened up about the long-standing rumors that Beyoncé, or more specifically, Beyoncé's team, blackballed her after allegedly stealing her sound. Let's break this down. There's always been speculation that Crazy in Love, yes, that song, was originally meant for Amerie. Both tracks were produced by the same man, Rich Harrison. Both feature those signature horns, that same explosive bounce, that same swagger. And yet, it was Beyoncé who got the song that changed her entire solo career. Amerie didn't say it outright. She's not one for shade, but she did say this: "He never played that record for me." That one line said everything. She acknowledged that Jay-Z loved her debut album deeply, that Rich Harrison was behind both her breakout and Beyoncé's, and that, yeah, Crazy in Love and One Thing sounding so similar? It's not a coincidence. But here's where it gets darker. Industry insiders have claimed for years that after Aaliyah passed, there was an open spot for the next R&B queen, and Beyoncé's camp was determined to fill it. That meant eliminating the competition. Jaguar Wright even alleged that Beyoncé pulled Rich Harrison away from Amerie after hearing her sound, and that Jay-Z's remix of One Thing was quickly shut down to avoid drawing too many comparisons. Whether those stories are true or not, one thing's for sure: Amerie vanished from the music spotlight almost overnight. Not because she wasn't talented, not because the fans stopped caring, but because she didn't want to play the game. She wasn't interested in stepping on others to climb higher. She had nothing to prove. Instead of chasing fame, Amerie turned inward. She took her English degree and started writing books. Bestsellers, actually. In 2017, she published Because You Love to Hate Me and launched a wildly successful book club. She found joy in literature, not limelight. And in a recent interview with Tamron Hall, Amerie said it plain: the industry didn't break her, it just wasn't built for someone like her. She talked about being a woman in music and how decisions were often made by men who didn't understand her vision. They wanted magazine covers and look pretty photo shoots. Amerie wanted to create art. That disconnect, it drove her out, but it never made her bitter. She's happy, grounded, at peace. And maybe that's the biggest plot twist in all these stories, whether it's Nas or Amerie. The true power isn't in the noise. It's in the quiet. Nas doesn't need to respond. Amerie doesn't need revenge. Their work, their grace, their legacies, that's the response. And a lesson? Sometimes silence speaks louder than any diss track ever could. If you're feeling this breakdown, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. Because we're not just talking gossip here. We're unpacking the stories behind the stories, the art behind the headlines. And trust me, the next one, it's even deeper. Stay tuned.